order the Monday, June 25th, 2018 Lincoln City City Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Mayor Williams is excused. Dick Anderson?
Yes.
Riley Hoagland?
Here.
Deanna Hinton?
Here.
Judy Casper?
Here.
And Susan Walke.
Here. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And could someone bring the sign-up sheet, please? Thank you, Mr. Townsend. This is a time for citizens to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item. And after I call the people who have signed up, I will ask for any others who did not get a chance to sign up. Mr. Halcott, could you come forward, please? Okay, thank you. And we ask that you state your... Okay, okay.
Isn't he doing the presentation on the highway flags?
But it's under comments from citizen president. So. Excuse me, Mr. Halcott, could you move the finance director's name tag over so people don't think that you're the finance director? Thank you. And I need you to state your name into the microphone and speak right clearly into the microphone.
Warren Halcott, Lincoln City.
Thank you. All right, and you have is it 5 minutes? And we're using the light system.
Okay. And hi, Council. I'm glad to be here again. It was in January when I was in January here, and we talked about safety and flagging some of the crosswalks and that sort of thing. In that interim time, I have gathered a lot of information. I've observed the traffic. I've canvassed with questions, the people downtown. All 30 of one of the businesses that I could find in that region of town. And I have like to separate this into two sections, really. One is the flags, and the other, I will talk about that. That's part of the paperwork that I just handed out, because I just found out about the TSP today. So I find that very interesting and a useful topic. I guess I still want to do the flag demonstration or whatever we call it. I'd like support on that because I think they really want it downtown, not just a little, all of them. All of them. I just went and talked to them today, and I said I was coming to this meeting, and if they could come, some may be here. I don't know. I didn't look, but I did tell them, and they would tell you the same thing that I'm telling you. So basically, did you ever have a chance to read these at all, this documentation, which is very poorly done? I just did my notes, and, you know, it isn't something I would be proud of, but I just know the data is in there. And I found a lot of things going wrong in that area, beyond the flags that I had originally thought. I thought there was a problem, didn't know what it was. Now I really know what it is. So, and I think I would like to have you guys rule on flagging or doing some kind of thing. We can demonstrate maybe less. I vision less than $100 worth of materials to do that, and it would be very educational for us and the town as we are in this busy season now, it's plenty of time to see what works and what doesn't work. So that's topic 1. Topic 2 is the bigger issues that I found in the downtown area. I really got the answers I was seeking, and I observed the traffic patterns for 200 minutes on a weekend, 2 weekends in March. And I put together a whole day's worth of different times during the day, 40-minute cycles. And I sat in front of the realty office near Maxwell's, and I looked at 8 crosswalks. And I saw what was crossing and what wasn't and who they were, and I noted whether they were children or dogs or over 60, because we may not have a good opinion of what that looks like. It's very threatening and imposing of a position down there when you stand on those crosswalks and those 3 tons of machines go by at above the speed limit. Topic 2, I see the solution that would be best in town would be to lower the speed limit to 20, I would say 20 miles per hour in that section between 22nd and 12th. Now that would mean people would have time to even read the signs and see the people, and they'd only be doing 30. I timed the vehicles between the 2 lights going down the road. When there was no traffic, and so to speak, it was light, they could go across that distance in 9 seconds. They were doing that with some regularity. I did notice there were 5 police passes through there, and they all averaged 10 as well. And they went through nicely. Nobody was crossing. It was early in the morning. However, when we have a situation like we do on our weekends right now, I think we have to face the fact of what's really happening. And I would challenge anybody that disagrees with that to go find out for themselves by crossing the street up at noon on those crosswalks. And if you can't...
You need to wrap up.
Okay, that, and I think we need turnarounds at each end of that where they can do a U-turn to come back through town because they missed the building they were going to, because they're in Neverland by the time they get past the building they were going to go to. That and the flags, lower speed limit would help. And I talked to ODOT and I found out all about that, getting that approved. It's all the city has to say we need a test, and they get the fella to do that and come out and study it. We can't get him till October. So we have plenty of time to think about this.
Okay, thank you for the information. And since you've given us some new information tonight, we will need some time to look at that.
Every one of those
Yep.
points on that piece of paper, I think, would fund work within the scope of what I've just told you.
Okay,
And it would be right in the spirit of what we're trying to do with that.
thank you. Thanks. Next person who has signed up is Kevin Koffel. And we need you to state your name and speak right into the microphone, please.
My name is Kevin Kofel, and I live here in Lincoln City. Just on the agenda item, I'd just like to say that the flags seem, it's better to try something than to do nothing. So a lot of that going around. Specifically, though, I'm here to talk about an issue that we brought up, or I brought up the last time I was here, which is general comments about nuisances and the possible revision of current codes concerning nuisances. During the last council meeting, I addressed concerns about solid animal waste on private property. Our situation at home may or may not be unique, and to remind the council, currently we have a continuing and ever-present accumulation of animal waste on property adjoining ours. Waste left to bake in the sun day after day, wear away with rain, and slowly decompose, while it generates unpleasant odors, pest attractant, and a breeding ground for bacteria. Specifically, this waste, dog waste, has no precedent for use as fertilizer and has no other place other than a sanitary receptacle and should be disposed of at the time it's created. I believe there are codes that come close to addressing this situation, but we spoke with Officer Gravenhorse about this, and the codes I'll mention: nuisance codes 8.12.020 letters B and F, and code 8.12070 letter A, generally seem to only cover manure, which seems just maybe an oversight. Manure specifically in the dictionary is waste used as fertilizer. So we were hoping that these codes would work, but I think that they could be amended to cover an issue like solid non-farm animal waste. And I'm not going to bother to read it, but I will enter it with the recorder. I've written a somewhat rough draft of a way a code or amended code might read. And I'd just like to finish up, but this is more than what's happening in our neighborhood, I think. Even if the properties next door to us have an epiphany and the issue for us disappears, I think it's a question that could be answered. I think the nuisance codes are really close to addressing an issue like this. And I don't think it's the first time, or maybe the only time it might come up. We were really hoping nuisance codes would help out, but I just think with a little amendment, they could address this situation. It's an issue. It's a sightly issue. The one property in question is actually a VRD. There's visitors that come to this and see what's going on, and it's unpleasant. So I'm about done. So I'd thank the council for their time, and I'll enter this with Ms. Steer.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Koffel. Next person who has signed up is John Fiedler.
My name is John Fiedler. I live in Otis Rose Lodge, and I'm also a repeat visitor. I was here about a year ago to highlight the same program I'm going to be talking about tonight. It's called Ask. The brochure I gave you looks like this, and there are a few at the back of the room as well if people would like to pick them up. This is about getting the word out as a step to reducing injury or death to children, especially in the summer when adult supervision may not be as consistent as during the school year. This effort by Ceasefire of Oregon asks parents to talk to other parents about the disposition of guns in the home. I guess the classic example would be a play date by your child in another person's house, and the Ask program wants you to consider adding this to your list of arrangements. Ask the parent of the child your child is going to visit, will any guns you have in the house be unloaded and locked up at the time of my child's visit? Statistics in the brochure I gave you say that 97% of parents surveyed 7 years ago didn't object to this question. but there's, I think, a more compelling statistic in that brochure that says, in a survey for pediatricians, the findings were that 90% of fatal firearm incidents involving children happen in the home. So it seems like a pretty pressing issue and something worth thinking about. I guess the upshot is that we can take care of this ourselves by simply having this conversation with other parents who are going to be responsible for your child sometime this summer. As I said, there are brochures available at the back. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Was there anyone else who wanted to speak at this time who weren't able to sign up? Okay. Next item on the agenda is presentation, recognition of the volunteers for the city float and the Rose Festival Parade. Mr. Marker.
Good evening, counselors. I'm happy to bring to you guys a short presentation on the Rose Festival Grand Floral Parade that Lincoln City had a float in. I was asked by Ron Chandler to piece together some volunteers, and we took the float that the Kiwanians used for Pixie Fest last year and recreated it with the theme of kind of play Lincoln City. The theme overall was play healthy, and so we wanted to highlight the great things that we have going on during the summer, which include the kite festival that we had this past weekend, the glass floats, as well as the other item, the sandcastle. Thank you, Susan. That one's down the road. So what we did was we deconstructed what you guys saw kind of the whale last year, and we were able to reuse majority of the waves and the items there, minus taking some away. Here you see two of my volunteers piecing together the initial frame for the sandcastle, as everything that is included. You see one of the volunteers, Catherine, here. That's a styrofoam ball that's been covered in glue, and we're using dyed coconut, because everything that goes on the float has to be organic. In case it falls off, it can wash away to a Portland City drain without any environmental harm. This is the construction, part of the construction of the octopus that was on the back side, as we did want to go with the theme of kind of our new city logo. And that's a foam insulation that I cut out with a jigsaw, spray painted, and then later covered it with rice that I dyed. Catherine here is working on our flag that you will see at the top of our float, kind of broadcasting to visitoregoncoast.org to drive people to our website. And lots of people going through the parade. Everybody knows and recognizes Lincoln City, and nobody says anything negative. Lots of, oh my gosh, we love Lincoln City, it's so great. And you can hear kids, and there's the float walkers minus myself. On the right is my Uncle Dean. He's in the back room here. There's Catherine Coleman, Mitch Parsons, who's also here, and Chloe Peterson, Catherine's daughter. So that's kind of our finished product. One of the things that we were super proud of is making it really come together, because it took a lot of work piecing it together, but you couldn't travel with it because most of this is styrofoam versus the main shape there. The committee for the Rose Festival makes those signs that everybody can see, the Lincoln City sign, and that's also made out of dyed rice. It's pretty unique how they get a stencil printed, and they kind of do a paint by number, and it's perfect. They spend lots of time doing these for all the floats, and they either have the coconut or rice. We were probably seen by most of the state of Oregon, as well as thousands and thousands of people lining up and down the roadway. One of the unique features of our design here was the door that you can see. Dean was the driver, and we contracted a device that he was able to pull a lever, and the door opened and closed to make it look like it was a drawbridge to a sandcastle. So it was really cool, and he's driving around, and you could hear kids like, oh, wow, it opens! And people thought that maybe it was remote controlled, because a lot of the drivers throughout most of the parade floats are hidden. So that was a cool way to kind of hide him, but create a a really unique look, which earned us the chairman's award for most creative. Unfortunately, Carol, who's one of the directors of the parade, is unable to be here. She wasn't feeling very well. So she'll put our award in the mail, and we can give you guys a show of it next time. This is us going over one of the bridges, and that's the octopus. Originally, our thought was to have people kind of on the float playing with sand or something along those lines, and the kites we are going to have in the air. But again, when I created that octopus that somebody was going to carry, or the kites, the weight of them kind of became an issue when you put a few pounds of long grain rice on it. So we were able to kind of come up with some devices and made some tweaks as we were busy setting up. So we were able to take some rebar and put the whale on the back, and we attached the string to make him look like he was playing, or he or she, or we call her Octavia. That was kind of what we nicknamed her, playing with the kites. There's your classic Portland, Oregon Old Town sign as we're coming back into the downtown on the Burnside. Hey, there's me.
You had great coverage on TV, too.
I'm happy to hear that. I got lots of, hey, I just saw you on TV. What are you doing at 7 in the morning?
My comment when I was watching was well-deserved.
So it was a lot of fun. I know that maybe it provided another opportunity that if we wanted to be a staple there in the parade, that with some gentle modifications to the existing float we have now, it could be very easily done with little amount of time, being that we kind of know what we're doing. I had a team of up to 12 volunteers, and they all kind of worked in phases. Some people only gave a few hours. Some people, like Mitch, spent probably close to 80 hours with it on me. So it was a great experience, and fun team to work with. We came under budget, and thanks to the VCB for providing that opportunity. Do you guys have any questions?
Nice job.
Thank you.
Good.
Do you know what the number of volunteer hours compared to last year?
I do not. Last year was a much different experience.
And this year you had your program down, you knew what to expect, and so you were able to do it in a
Yeah,
shorter
understanding that we had to make a lot of the day of preparation stuff there. It was just kind of leading up. So all those styrofoam containers there, had to be painted with glue and covered in crushed walnut. And so that alone took some time, because I had 30 of them, as well as the whole deck, as well as the whole castle was also covered in the crushed walnut. The dark pieces that you see along the side that kind of give some depth of a window. That's the tops of those styrofoam coolers. They're covered in brown flaxseed, and it just takes a lot of work. Probably the coolest component I'd have to say would be the creating of the styrofoam balls and placing them. When Mitch and I were making them, the joke was that you could tell which ones he did, because they looked like a good spiral glass float versus mine that looked more like a deformed beach ball. So
beach balls.
Lots of praise to my volunteers, and especially my uncle and his friend Lane, who are also, they live in Portland. They were able to come up and help when some of the other volunteers who were Lincoln City bound weren't able to. So coming in clutch for me, and just being able to run to the store or anything that we needed to get the float completed.
That's great.
Team effort.
Absolutely.
I just want to say congratulations. And I also want to mention the flower arrangements. They were so pretty, and the colors were so nice.
Carla, I think it's Steinberg, her and her husband are like there's like one or two of the directors of the whole thing, and she's one of them, and she specializes in the mini floats and floral decoration. So I was lucky that I didn't have to worry about any of that. She said, hey, what do you want? Because she sent me, I kind of gave her the idea of, hey, I want to have sandcastle and kites. It's great. She sent me this mock-up, and the mock-up looked pretty much exactly like those flowers, just, that she put together in clip art. So it was really cool. And we got there, said, this is what you need to do, and then she took care of all the floral arrangements, minus me stapling the baby's breath along the perimeter there.
It's very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
I just want to say the Sandcastle contest is Saturday, August 11th.
Thank you. I totally spaced that one.
The next item on the agenda is the Oregon Main Street Program, Lincoln City presentation.
Good evening. Okay, so I'm happy to say that we're continuing with our economic development efforts, and one of the recommendations in the 2017 Economic Opportunities Analysis was to join the Oregon Main Streets program. And so we did that in January of this year, and have been busy on many things, and asked Sherry Stewart with the Oregon Main Street program if she would be willing to come over and present to council and give an overview of what is Oregon Main Street's program and what are the opportunities that we would have to take advantage of various things and help us move along on some of our other objectives with Main Streets and economic development. So, thanks, Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Stewart. I coordinate the statewide Oregon Main Street program, and we are so thrilled to welcome you into the Main Street family. So I'm happy to be here in my first official capacity in working with you. Allison was gracious enough to take us on a great driving tour this afternoon. I actually have two of our summer staff with us. Two of the students at the University of Oregon's preservation program is with us this summer. So they're getting their introduction to Main Street tonight as well, and I'm happy to have him. Oregon Main Street is part of Oregon Heritage, which is based in Oregon Parks and Rec, so we're part of state government. I've been working with the program here in Oregon since 2009, but I started my Main Street career 28 years ago, so don't add those numbers up because obviously I started when I was 12. I'm happy to talk to you about what the structures that we use in Oregon Main Street, and then the types of services that you're eligible for as a result of participating in our Oregon Main Street network. So one of the first things that's important to know is that we're grounded in the model that was developed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Main Street America is now an independent nonprofit subsidiary of the National Trust, but we still use the model that they developed in 1977, and which has been used effectively in over 2,000 communities across the country. We work here in Oregon with about 85 communities in our network, but the model that we use is a comprehensive approach to downtown revitalization. It's looking at all of those elements that make for a successful commercial district. The beauty of the model is it's flexible based upon what the individual assets are that each community has and really working on those assets. I can guarantee there's no two communities that are alike here in Oregon that we work with. We work with really small communities like Port Orford, that's a little bit over 1,200 people, to an urban neighborhood district, the Alberta district in Portland, and every size community in between. Last week I was in the road in Bandon and then went over to Ontario, Oregon, and two very different communities. But the key part of the comprehensive approach is one, having an organizational structure in place that will help guide the revitalization effort over the long haul. And then it's working on physical improvements within the district and here within your PEARLs, many districts that you have here in Lincoln City to work with. So what are those distinct features and elements, both on the private sector and public sector, that you want to continue to work on and enhance as you move forward with your revitalization efforts? It's working on the economic base through the economic vitality component. So it's helping strengthening existing businesses so that they're as successful as they possibly can. And it's working at those opportunities within the district where there's either vacancies or undeveloped sites, so that you can have compatible infill development based upon what your community's goals and objectives are. And then it's working on the promotion and marketing piece to make sure that you're working in concert with other entities in your community, both on events and activities and branding activities for your districts, to all work in concert. Each one does something different to help strengthen a district, so it's important when you're looking at a comprehensive revitalization effort that you have projects and activities in each of those 4 points. With Main Street, too, since it's been a successful model, in fact, the Economic Development Administration, the federal agency, has named it the most effective downtown revitalization program in the country. Based upon that success and looking at communities across the country, what some of those successful key attributes are, we also have 8 guiding principles in addition to the 4 points of the Main Street approach. It's being incremental, recognizing that change doesn't happen overnight, that you have your vision and that you work slowly towards achieving that vision. Starting small, getting people to just work together and develop what their priorities are, and then begin chipping away at those over the years. When I started my Main Street career, I started as the executive director of a small town in the state of Washington, Port Townsend, if any of you have heard of that community. I can guarantee you when they started their Main Street effort in 1985, it is not the district that it is today. In fact, none of the upper floors pretty much had any uses in them, because it had been a town that was built on speculation at the turn of the century. And so it was working incrementally over the years to really bring back the historic character, work on saving and preserving the key assets of the community, while also allowing businesses to develop and be successful as well. So it's really kind of working incrementally over the years. It's not a once we're all done, we're done kind of a process either. It's knowing that you have to continually be involved with your revitalization over the long haul. It's not a 3-year project, a 5-year project. It's a commitment that a community makes when you undertake a Main Street. It's being comprehensive, working in each of those 4 areas of the Main Street approach that I mentioned. And it's community driven. It's not us coming in from the state telling you what to do, because you all know what you want your community to be, to look, to feel, to function in the future. So it's really a matter of drawing that out and then figuring out what projects and activities you can undertake to help you achieve the future that you want. It's a public-private partnership in the truest sense of the word. It's recognizing that city is an important project in revitalization efforts, but you can't do it all. That it's really leveraging both the business and property owners within your district, but also recognizing that the community has a stake and really getting everybody engaged in projects and activities to achieve the future that you want. It's building on your existing assets. As I mentioned, every community in Oregon is different. It has its own set of architecture, its own history, its own heritage, its own public and private assets. And so it's really looking at what those assets are, doing an asset roadmap, and then really incorporating those into the projects and activities that you undertake. So what you achieve through your revitalization effort is authentic to your community. So we're not trying to make you be another town down the road. We're trying to help you preserve the character that you all value, but really to build on that to strengthen through your revitalization efforts. It's doing things in a quality manner, and doing things in a quality manner sometimes takes time. It takes some planning time. It also takes some implementation time. So when you look at some of the historic buildings that you still have in your downtown, those were built, with a good deal of pride. And so trying to bring back some of those assets, but also imbuing that level of quality in all of the activities that you do. It's also recognizing that you need to be change-oriented. And a lot of people are a little nervous about change. They like things the way they are, or they're afraid of what change might be. But it's recognizing that change happens no matter what. And you can either let change happen to you, or you can set those goals and objectives for yourself and direct the change as you move forward. And that's what we try and do with the Main Street approach. We really identify what those community goals are and then really tweak the work that we do, the projects and activities, so that you're directing the future of your change and not just letting it happen to you. And then it's being implementation oriented. It's rolling up the sleeves and recognizing that, yes, we've identified those projects and activities, but we're not just going to get together every week and sit down and go rehash those plans. It's actually setting some timelines for ourselves, attracting the people and financial resources that you need to move forward with events and activities, and really rolling up the sleeves and getting the work done. Through Oregon Main Street, when we embrace the Main Street model, we actually have a licensing fee that we pay to Main Street America so that our communities can use this model and to say that they are a Main Street community. With that said, every state, well, we have to use that basic 4-point approach when we work with communities that say they're on our Main Street list. We have a great deal of flexibility from the state level in designing the program that meets the needs of our state residents. And in Oregon, we came up with our model in 2007 when Oregon Main Street was restarted. And we decided to have a tier system when we were in place to enable us to work with the broadest range of communities. And so our tier system, we have 4 different levels. We have an associate level. Communities that participate in that level are just interested in downtown revitalization, but not ready yet to move forward with the Main Street model. So they are signed on to our network, and we send them notices of our meetings and activities and invite them to participate. But it's really at the Main Street track that we begin to engage with communities. And on the Main Street track, we have 3 levels. We have the Exploring Downtown level, which is where you're at, which is the introductory level to the Main Street track. Transforming Downtown and Performing Main Street. Performing Main Street are communities that have accreditation status with the National Main Street Center. When you're participating in the Main Street track, you're eligible for a lot of technical assistance. We're state agencies, so we do not charge for our services. So when we come in and work with your community, either we're doing that through our staff resources, or if we bring other folks in, we're paying for those folks to come in and work with you. The types of technical assistance that you're eligible for at the Exploring Downtown level, we can come in and help work on what the right organizational structure is. And if you have community members who want to get involved in downtown revitalization, we can come in and do some strategic planning with them, some goal setting. And then if they begin to implement the Main Street model, which is what we're hoping at the Exploring Downtown level, you learn more about that and you get people excited and they want to participate. And then we form committees or task forces based upon the 4 points of the Main Street model. When that happens, then we can come in and do some committee training for those folks, and then committee work planning with them too. So developing those action implementation oriented plans by identifying projects and activities that they will undertake based upon community goals and objectives. We also do periodic workshops and trainings. We do conferences every other year. This year we're doing Main Street on the Move bus tour, so we're taking people around to see what other communities have achieved. We're calling it our Best Practices Bus Tour in October. For communities that haven't had a historic survey, we do a reconnaissance level survey. We also have the Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant through our heritage programs. This was approved by the legislature a couple years ago. We had our first round of grants last year. We had $2.5 million in our first round and gave out 26 grants up to $100,000 each. We were given additional funding for a second round, so we will open up those applications in January. We were given twice as much money for our second, so we will have a pool of $5 million available in grant funds opening again in January. We will have grants up to $200,000 in this round. Those grants are for building improvement projects that spur economic development. So those are for grants that will help retain a business, so help an existing business make modifications that help it be more successful. It can be interior or exterior improvements. It can be for vacant spaces to make those spaces more usable. It can be for compatible new infill. But it would have to be within one of the Pearl districts that we accepted when you applied to be at the Exploring Downtown level. At least 50% of the funds have to go to rural Oregon, as defined by the legislature. This is just a graphic way of looking at our different tiers. So again, we have our 3 levels. The Exploring Downtown, Transforming Downtown, and Performing Main Street, and then we have the associate level. We're about roughly split between the 85 communities that are participating between our Main Street track level and our associate level communities. And just to see how you are on the chart, there you are, right there in the middle of our Exploring Downtown level. Now, are we being successful? When I started with Oregon Main Street in 2009, we hadn't really been tracking our effectiveness. So beginning in 2010, we began asking our Performing Main Street level communities to submit quarterly reports, and then in 2011, we asked our Transforming Downtown to submit those quarterly reports as well. Our Exploring Downtown, we asked to submit annual reports, but we don't capture that information in this data. When we started, we were during the economic downturn. So that first year, I wasn't really expecting positive reinvestment stats, but we did. And it was really astonishing to me because private sector improvements and new business openings, job creation was happening in Oregon during the economic downturn in our Main Street communities. We've had since 2010 over $97 million of private sector reinvestment. We've had close to $100 million in public sector investment in our Main Street communities. We've had 647 net new businesses open. So while we have had some closures, we've had many more new businesses open in our Main Street districts than have closed. We've had, during that time, 146 business expansions, which I think is equally as important as creating those new businesses. We've had close to 3,400 net new jobs in those Main Street districts. And we've had over 1,200 building improvement projects within our Main Street districts during that time, which I think is pretty phenomenal. Those are small scale to major building rehabs, but it is saying that reinvestment is and was happening in our Main Street districts. And I think what's even more gratifying to me is that we've had over 180,000 volunteer hours given to our Main Street communities within those time periods. And I know that's actually underreported. People get a little bit confused about what counts as a volunteer hour or not. So I know that's seriously underreported, but even so, that's a lot of volunteer time. So I think the message is that the Main Street approach is an effective tool that our Oregon communities are using to help revitalize their commercial communities, commercial downtowns. I wanted to just share with you 4 brief slides, and then I'll conclude, of what's been happening in some of our Main Street communities. So the first one I'll talk about is our Great American Main Street award-winning community this year, the first one on the West Coast in 10 years. They received this honor in Kansas City this year. But downtown Oregon City was one of our first Performing Main Street level communities when we restarted. They formed in 2008 and hired their first executive director. I can tell you, when I first went to that district in 2009 compared to today, it's dramatically different downtown. There were a lot of vacancies in the downtown. The county offices had moved up to a campus up on the hill and had left a significant number of vacancies downtown. Now a lot of those are full with thriving businesses. And there's been a lot of cleanup in the downtown as well. They've done some creative things. They had one-way grid in the downtown, and they did a pilot two-way grid with their transportation in the downtown, and it was very successful. It was very controversial, but once it did go in, businesses on those streets that were part of the pilot actually saw an increase in traffic, in foot traffic in their businesses. We've also seen a lot of new events. They didn't have a lot of events happening in the downtown prior to the Downtown Oregon City Association being formed. Now they have the First City Celebration, and they do a really cool brew fest. That's the Oregon Trail Brew Fest. So they have beer from all along the Oregon Trail, ending up in Oregon City as part of their brew fest. So that's kind of a cool idea, spin on a brew fest, right? So very successful. You can see the stats there. They've had 50 rehab projects. They have 228 net new jobs that have happened in the downtown. So it's pretty amazing since 2008 what has happened. On the other spectrum is Port Orford. I was just down there a couple of weeks ago, just a little bit over 1,000 population, but this tiny town has a big heart. When I first visited them, it's very small. It's, the highway runs through their main street. It has a lot of what we call missing teeth in the downtown, where there's buildings that have parcels that haven't been developed, or they've lost those buildings in the downtown. So we were looking at the possibilities and what a small town could actually rally around their Main Street effort. And what I noticed when we were doing the driving tour and talking to folks is they have a lot of artists that live in the area of all types, writers to visual artists to performing arts, just really a wealth, a core. So we use arts kind of as their overarching revitalization strategy. So they developed a work plan, so their promotion activities kind of tied to that theme, their design activities tied to that theme through mural projects, and they did paint on all of their fire hydrants in the downtown. So really trying to bring that artistic character to life in their community. And they've had 10 new art galleries that have opened. As they pointed out to me, that's only almost one for every 100 residents that they have. So they're beginning to see the fruits of their efforts since starting in 2009. And they've just gone through a road diet as well to do some bike lanes to make the highway a little bit more pedestrian friendly and bike friendly in their downtown as well. Astoria, up on the north coast, population a little bit over 9,500. They're also one of our longer term programs. They started out as exploring, they quickly went to transforming downtown, and now they're a performing Main Street, a top tier level community. They already had a great downtown, but there were a lot of buildings that needed some love. They were vacant and had been boarded up for many years. And now we're seeing some of these major buildings have new life. Fort George was one of the outliers and one of the major projects in the downtown and has been a good partner. We gave them one of our Oregon Main Street revitalization grants, the Astoria Downtown Historic District Association, for workforce housing project. There's a building that's been sitting vacant for 30 years in downtown, and that will now be workforce housing, a serious issue for their community as it is for many of our coastal and resort communities. But they've created a very vibrant downtown. Since they started, they've had over 270 net new jobs created. They've had over $6.5 million of private sector reinvestment, and I believe that's significantly up this next year. And we've had over 40 building rehab projects in that community too. So we're really beginning to see the fruits of their effort, just taking their downtown to that next level. And then finally, I'll mention another teeny tiny town that's close to my heart, one of the first that I went to right outside of Salem. Dayton is a small town of about 2,500. When I went into their downtown, the majority of the buildings in the downtown were vacant or underutilized, all needed some rehab work on them, some renovation work. Since they started, Dayton is one of those communities that every type of incentive that we've made available, every type of training that we've offered, they've brought multiple people to attend those and have applied for all of that type of work. So we did a facade renovation project for them, where we did facade renovation or facade renderings for 8 buildings in the downtown. 7 of those have been completed. When you have a tiny town around a square and you have that many projects happening, it's transformative. The downtown program now has something they call Dayton Friday Nights throughout the summertime. So this is a town of a little over 2,500. They're averaging over 360 people a week in their downtown, in their little square. So that's translating into at least 129 people in their businesses, foot traffic in those businesses. They're having a serious economic impact in their district by doing those types of projects. They've done some art projects, some other events and activities, and they had their first new infill project too, which was ground floor commercial. They have a Dayton Mercantile, which opened, and a wine tasting room, and the upper floor had 3 apartments, and those were rented out before they were even completed. So this is just a feel for what some of our Main Street communities are achieving. Most of these communities that I've highlighted started in 2008, 2009 with their Main Street revitalization efforts, but in the scheme of things, in those short years, they have had more progress in a positive way based upon what the community wanted them to achieve than they had probably in the 30 years prior to that. So it's pretty amazing what the Main Street approach has accomplished. So again, we're thrilled to have you here as part of our family, and we look forward to working with you as we move forward with your revitalization efforts. So,
thank you. Any comments, questions from council members?
Yes. I guess this is a little bit probably more for Allison. This first question. We've just completed, although council hasn't seen yet, the visioning that the city has gone through. And so I wanted to know how this dovetails with that, as well as the planning department and planning commission are going to be looking at the signage ordinance and commercial design standard ordinance. So I just wonder how all this kind of pulls together.
That's a great question. As we move along, one really informs the next. We have just completed our branding. We are waiting for the final plan for the comprehensive plan, and that will help us kind of figure out where we want to go. And then this really is going to be more focused on the kind of on the ground. We'll have the big framework ideas, but the design guidelines with the Main Street's offerings with their program will fit together in actual on-the-ground improvements. Tools maybe that we can create for economic development toolbox, where we partner with private property owners. I see all of these as being different components to help us figure out how to support those private property owners in really achieving a more unified objective, kind of cohesive, and everybody moving in the same direction. So that was kind of I don't know, Sherry, do you have any thoughts on that?
Actually, it's great that you've gone through that, because that will actually give you information to use the Main Street structure to kind of implement some of those things that you've been working on and thinking of. So it's actually a really good time to dovetail with that.
Go ahead. Sorry. I had a couple other questions too, but I think in our packet, I think some of those questions have been answered. One of them was, I was just curious about the organizational structure, and I believe you mentioned that would be kind of the next step, trying to figure out what that would look like. And then I'm mostly curious too about how the chamber is going to be involved in a big way.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. this is not, as Sherry mentioned, this is not, the city marching in and saying, this is what we need. This will really just provide a structure as we move forward with all of these goals to, we've talked about in urban renewal with removing blight and helping to enhance the appearance of the street and buildings. And I think that all of those things that we've been talking about and working towards, with urban renewal has been a lot of public space improvements. And now we're really thinking about how can we do more partnerships with private property owners and undeveloped land. We don't, with economic development, we've done a lot, but we haven't ever had a nice, neat structure about here's where we are going, which the comprehensive plan is going to provide. We have our economic opportunities analysis with lots of recommendations. We have a lot already available in terms of tasks to do. The question is who can do them, who are our partners, and really how to prioritize, how to make the biggest bang for the buck. And I think with Main Streets, that can help a great deal in focusing and prioritizing and then developing tools if we don't have them already, like our facade improvement loan is great for the urban renewal area. But if you're not in the urban renewal area, what tools are available, and starting to look at, based on Main Streets, what are those top objectives, and then how do we create incentives for property owners to really move forward with accomplishing some of these things that they may want to do, but they don't know how to do them. So really looking to partner with private sector more often.
And in terms of the specific organizational model for your community, we work with each community to figure out what's the best structure for you. The examples I give were all independent nonprofit, as most of ours are in our Oregon Main Street network. But we also work with communities. Some are city-based programs like Estacada and the city of Canby. Their Main Street model is kind of housed in city government. In Tillamook, it's actually part of the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street program is. So in terms of what organizational structure is right as you continue to move forward, I think the city is kicking it off right now. But that's an ongoing conversation, how to keep the momentum going. So the next step would be to have a broader community meeting to invite people who are interested in this model and figure out what's the right match for you and how to get that structured. The Main Street, National Main Street, Main Street America has actually moved away from the rigid independent nonprofit model, and is actually what we've been doing in Oregon for a few years now, is looking at more flexible structure based upon what the assets are and the needs are for a particular community. Sometimes people have an overarching structure but recognize different people, like the chamber might do the marketing piece or promotion piece, and figuring out if you have entities in the community, but using the Main Street model to kind of make sure that you're taking care of activity. So what structure you use will be unique to your needs as we move forward.
So I have a question. So it sounds like we're moving from exploring downtown to eventually Main Street. Is that correct? Is that our goal? I'm not sure. I mean, we have already applied, I guess, to become this, because on Ordinance 2017-06, there's mention of consider joining the Oregon Main Street program, and suddenly we are in the Oregon Main Street program, and so I'm surprised. I guess this will be good for us. I'm concerned about some of the things that are required of it, including an executive director, getting people together. I notice they use the transformation strategies, which also is used to assist developing leadership in communities to guide toward transitional changes. And I guess my big question is, what is our transitional goal other than under economic development, revitalizing properties? Which property? We have 6 pearls. Which one will it be? We have a lot of things going on right now. We're doing the visioning. We're doing getting folks together for input. We're starting on new logos. Housing is the number one issue. Even though we bring all these new things together and jobs, we still have the issue of where these people are going to live. And I feel like we're putting a lot of energy here, or our citizens, the community are, when we could be putting that energy on housing issues. So I'm in conflict with where we as a community are going to put our physical energy and resource and time.
I can say at the Exploring Downtown level, some communities stay at that level for a number of years. So you're not, we don't require you within 2 years, 3 years to move to the Transforming Downtown level. We don't require staffing at the Exploring Downtown level. At the Exploring Downtown level, that's what it is. You're exploring the Main Street model, exploring what's the best structure for you to get started. So you move at your own pace.
So if we developed housing along the way and then went back to putting a little more energy and guidance into this, that would still be an option available for us, given this time frame?
Yeah, like I said, you move at your own pace on this. We have had some communities that's been at the Exploring Downtown level and achieved really great things, but they've been there for 10 years. So, so it's at, and sometimes that housing might be within one of your districts. So it's actually might be part of one of your Main Street goals to help assist and facilitate moving forward with that housing goal.
And in your documents here, it gives the outline of how to develop a director and board of directors and whatever, which is a fantastic model. But in our case, if we're just at the beginning stages, who's to say? Are we, the city council? Is our economic person, Allison, the one who's going to guide us as to how we're moving along? Allison, can you help me out here? How does this evolve? I mean, who's the engineer on this train? How does this work?
I love your questions because those are the same questions that I have. As we are really taking more of a concerted effort, focused effort with economic development, we don't have all the answers to those questions. We have a great set of foundational things like the comp plan that's underway and the design guidelines that's just kicking off. We also have 4 community vision plans that Urban Renewal has done since 1999 for 4 of these parts of town. So, you know, a lot of the things that we have been doing are part of this Main Street approach for revitalization. We just hadn't had a more broad framework for it, or even access to training or resources. And with Urban Renewal kind of winding down with the district, we also need something to carry forward into the future to help us with our revitalization efforts in the same parts of town that we've been working for a number of years. I don't know the who yet. I think that's part of the conversation is, who do we have here now in town? And I know Sherry's got a lot more experience with this. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and it really depends on you know, which partners are able to step forward and which ones are able to do which kind of slices of the pie. And this isn't the only thing that we will be working on in these parts of town. I mean, we do have housing issues, and it's not a matter of does it happen in Main Street or not, or do we just pick up Main Street and run with that for a while and ignore any other balls that are in the air, because we have a lot of priorities and a lot of things that we're working on. I'm kind of getting into the weeds, and I realize it's just the start of the meeting, so I don't want to continue talking too much. But I think that those questions will be answered as we start to look at what are our next steps and how do we continue, as Sherry mentioned, continue the momentum that we've done. We've done a lot so far, but how do we really you know, continue to move forward and in ways that we haven't in the past.
So would this also carry over into the development of a new urban renewal district?
It could, yeah. It depends on what parts of town a district would be moving forward.
So
Does it have a Main Street type of feel? I mean, there are different characteristics about Main Streets that Sherry and I have been talking about, and Lincoln City is very unique with our 6 and now 7 being Roads End, where there isn't a lot of commercial activity other than lodging, which is an important part of our economy. It's not like a classic Main Street sort of a feel in Roads End, but we have a lot of parts of town, and so trying to really figure out where we want to focus, and we've been talking about that for almost a year now, about what parts of Lincoln City do we want to really emphasize on revitalization, and what's kind of the low-hanging fruit, and how can we best leverage staff time and resources. And anyway, I think I'm yammering maybe too much, but do you want to add anything, Sherry? Okay. Did that help a little bit?
A little.
Okay, I'm happy to talk more with you, but I think mostly this is access to resources and a framework as we go forward with continuing what we've done so far.
Mr. Anderson, did you?
Elton, what I've heard you say is, and I think we've talked about it, is you're one person in an economic development arena, and you see Main Street as perhaps a support system to you, for us, to grow further. Is that a good way to look at it? I don't think we ever expected you to do everything, so you're reaching out, and this is, because I've heard resources from Sherry and stuff that would help us in our continued visioning and growth.
Absolutely. And economic development isn't done by one person anywhere. It is a set of partners that work together on different aspects of what economic development is for each community.
Because I heard earlier, I think the answer to an earlier question was business will buy in or have the opportunity to buy in, because in looking at this, my fear is always that it's city-run, city-driven, and not having that buy-in. So if I could, the only question kind of unanswered for me, and I don't want it to be on a negative side. So Sherry, could you, because I know cities don't fail, but when they don't meet their goals in even a long period of time, what are some of the reasons why they don't? What are they structural or lack of leadership?
Yes and yes.
Yeah, well, help me so we could avoid them. I'm looking for, knowing the community, where are we going to have to give extra oomph to? Because as I said earlier, I would hope it's not a city exclusive driver, that there's a lot of buy-in and needs to be a lot of buy-in, but I need to envision where they need to buy in, and usually failures or not meeting goals kind of gives you where you got the head nod for a while, but people either wear out or weren't really committed.
I worked with the National Main Street Center for 8 years, and when I was working for National, about 19% of the programs nationwide that adopted the Main Street model ended up backing out of the Main Street model. And that's because there's an S curve in terms of the development and growth of a Main Street program. So you start out small and incremental, and that's about 3 to 5 years, and then you hit that exponential part of the S curve where the majority of the work takes place. And that can be, from year 5 to 15 that you're in that growth period, and then it levels off into what we call the management. So that's the catalyst, growth, and management phase of the Main Street model. And what I saw is where people were failing was that transition from the catalyst phase to the growth phase. And it was my observation that it happened because we didn't spend the time developing the organizational structure, attracting the people and financial resources that you needed to sustain that long-term effort. So while the vast majority do succeed and move forward, those that don't succeed and move forward, it's really they didn't take the time. They jumped too fast into projects and activities without spending the time building their community capacity.
Thank you.
I have one last question. You had an interesting chart there, and I didn't see it anywhere in our material. It was about, you had the 4 areas and then cities that were under those areas. Could we have a
Slide
copy
7.
of that chart?
Slide 7.
Was it slide 7? I saw Lincoln City briefly under exploring.
third, there it is.
There we go. Is that listing of cities? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's the list of cities that are participating in my network, and it's changing day to day. We're
get
having a few
copy
more.
of that?
Sure.
Okay, could we get a copy of that? I was just curious.
Yeah, we have it on our website.
Mr. Hoagland, did you have a comment?
Yeah. How many cities did you say in total? 85?
85 as of this morning, yeah.
So if we took the 3,400 jobs over 7 years and then divided that by the 85s, you don't have
No, it's only the top 2 tiers that we collect those stats from.
and
So that would be the performing Main Street and transforming downtown. So
So it's not-
those stats, that's are only reflected from those communities. Now, work was moving forward in the others. We just don't include it in those others because I don't have as high a confidence in the data as I do from our top 2 level communities, because those communities tend to have paid staff, and so they're able to track the data a little bit more effectively than our all volunteer programs. So while I know progress is happening in those lower tiers, I just don't include it in the stats that I report to the legislature. So
all right.
I want to be confident in it.
As far as the fees, you said half of it has to go to rural Oregon. You had said something. The fees.
Yes, that's
Which
the
fees
Oregon
are
Main
that?
Street Revitalization Grant. The way the legislation was written, at least half of the funds that are in the Oregon Main Street must go to rural Oregon.
And then Main Street Oregon is funded federally.
No, we're part of Heritage Programs, which is in Oregon Parks and Rec.
Oregon Parks and Rec, and then
Correct.
half of the funds that you disperse go to rural Oregon.
Yeah, that's a separate, that's a grant specific. It's not the technical assistance. So the technical assistance, wherever you're at in the tier system, we provide that support that you need. But the Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant, which is a tool that we have to help with building improvement projects, that particular grant fund, that is the one that has to go to 50% to rural Oregon.
And they're given to the business owners, or they're given to the organization, the locals. You said some Tillamook's in the Chamber of Commerce, some of it's nonprofit, so it's
Sure.
to that.
Yeah, so the way the legislation was written, which is somewhat unusual in our grant programs, it has to be whoever is the Oregon Main Street Network participant. In this case, right now, it's the Lincoln City that is signed on. So you would be the applicant on behalf of the private business or property owner who's going to be making that. So you have to manage the grant on their behalf, but the funds go to them.
On a on a business by business application. And then, I don't forget which page it was, but you had said, are we seeking the packets that are we seeking to be accredited as a Main Street? And I found it interesting that it's trademarked, and the other one is Main Street Approach was trademarked. And I just found that kind of funny, but that you can put a sticker on your window that says Main Street Approach. I mean, that's the goal in revitalization and everything, but that's the golden star, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. It means that you've achieved a certain level. So those performing Main Street level, most of them are accredited, and they're pretty proud of it because they've met some benchmarks that have been established by Main Street America. And yeah, Main Street Approach, National Main Street Center, all of those have been trademarked as it relates to downtown revitalization. So the National Main Street Center holds a trademark for those.
And the 12 or so there at the performing, the top, how long did it take for those cities to get to that point from associates or affiliated at that time?
Some of them started out immediately at the performing Main Street. So when we were first started, our first round of applications was in 2008. So Oregon City applied immediately to be a performing Main Street. They just knew that they were ready and had the capacity to do that.
By providing the necessary things in that, where you had that list of you need this to be this part.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of information.
Sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I'm grateful that Allison included all of the pearls in this application so that we don't have to choose which area of town.
Yeah, that's-
We can help our 7-mile-long town in all areas of it. Appreciate that.
If I may, that was one of the things that I did write down, is it said 20 close buildings, and so there's probably only one place in, just a few different places in town, so that's, my concern is that if we did have the entire city apply, the main street would be from mile marker, whatever the south end to whatever the north end. I mean, I don't know, and I guess this is just the beginning, but for me, it's hard to see Main Street here and then nothing for a while, and then, oh, here it's again, and then nothing for a while, where the other cities, it seemed like there's a square or, a very well-defined place, and so I feel that it might be very difficult to say this is Main Street,
We do have districts that are atypical. Milton Freewater. It's on the east side of the state, in between Pendleton and Walla Walla, Washington. So Milton, Freewater, two separate towns that in the 60s joined as one city. So they have Milton, a traditional Main Street district, long stretch, and Freewater. We call that the hyphen, Milton hyphen Freewater, so that's the hyphen. so like I said, every town is unique, and Allison made a great case to me why we take you on as the string of pearls. So I was like, yeah, we'll this is worth a try, so we'll give it a try.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming, Sherry.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. We have no public hearings today, no ordinances. We have one resolution on the agenda. A resolution 2018-13, authorizing and directing budget transfers for the City of Lincoln City, Oregon in the 2017-18 fiscal year budget. Ms. Bridges.
Good evening. In the resolution, we're requesting budget transfers. This is basically moving money from one budget category to another budget category, and that's just to adjust any areas where there's been or we anticipate that there will be some overages over budget, and we compensate for that by reducing another category. The specific requests and the information about them is included in the packet, so in the interest of time, I won't go over them unless you would like me to, or if there are any questions.
I just have a general question.
Yes.
Why does this come after we do the budget and we do these transfers? I understand the ones beforehand, and then we do the budget, and then now we have transfers. This is, I think, the second time now after the budget. I'm just wondering, why is that the case?
I usually do this analysis as late as I can to try to catch as many as I can.
Okay.
It's the last time I can.
Oh, okay.
I can't amend last year's budget in July. So
Thank you for explaining.
These are transfers in the current year budget that ends on Saturday.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
they're not changes to next year. They're
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-13 budget transfer fiscal year 2017-18.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Resolution 2018-13. Roll call, please. Oh, discussion. Excuse me. Further discussion? No. Okay. Roll call.
Walke,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yes.
Hinton,
Yes.
and Casper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Special order of business, Mr. Dreistadt. First item is the new website development presentation. Mr. Dreistadt of Explore Lincoln City. I decided you have an even longer title now because you are Director of Explore Lincoln City, formerly Visitor and Convention Bureau.
That's right. AKA. Actually, I had to correct myself. I don't know how many times today when I answered the phone. It's, old habits die hard. Let's see. Yeah, we have two requests in front of you, and both of these are projects that have been on hold for a long time that we're coming before you now because we can turn them loose. The kind of the dam is broken, and with the new branding rolling out and whatnot, we and beyond that, the positioning for the city, you know, being approved by City Council, we can finally get some of these big projects up and rolling and moving. The website project has been delayed a couple of times. It's gotten pushed into, I think, twice into the next fiscal year, waiting for the branding to settle down. And the, excuse me, the first one here is the Interactive Agency of Record. It's actually the website project. And I'll try to go through this really fast. There's a lot of copy and a lot of pages. If I'm going too fast, slow me down. I'm happy to back up and explain more. But this is the website we have right now. It was put together in 2010, and it has a prettier face on top of it now, but it's still the same website. That's the last time we did a major revamp of the website. And if you look at where it got by the time 2015 rolled around, it was added to and added to and added to and added to, which is what happens with websites typically over time. On the right is how deep our homepage went. And keep in mind, people tend not to scroll, and they especially won't scroll down if that's what pops up on your phone, which is how it was back then. We counted close to 300 different things you could click on the home page. We had one pull-down menu with 65 options. It was a little hard to navigate and a little hard to find what you needed. So we went in and pruned it a little bit in 2016. We laid a new skin over top of it, changed it to where it was 7 miles of smiles, new graphics scheme. It's still the 2010 website underneath. You can now go on a tablet or a phone, and it looks like it's mobile friendly. It is not. It basically senses as best it can what you're coming in on and flips you to another site. We have 2 simplified sites in addition to the site we have. A couple of problems with that is Google hates sites like that. So we get penalized, we don't get as much traffic, we don't have as much organic search results, because it's not search engine friendly. And we've added even more on top of the old website. We've got Jackrabbit plugged in. We've got CrowdRiff, that whole crowdsourced photography thing that we added. We added featured content. We have Instagram plugins. It all works, but it wasn't designed for that. So it's a lot of tack-ons and make-dos. So what we have right now is it's an old site. Under the hood, it's from 2010. It is not responsive. The search engines don't like that. It's not search engine friendly. We're supposed to have an ADA compliant website. We don't. It's not user friendly, and it's just not the right tool anymore. I mean, the whole thing about tourism is we're in the business of treating people like they're a guest. And we do that as well as we can when people get to town. We should treat them that way before they get to town. And what we have right now isn't treating them as a guest the way that it should.
Can you explain to me how a website's ADA compliant?
There are, I think it's 3 different levels of ADA compliancy. And it's things like having a plug-in in the site that'll literally read the site to you, that'll resize for people that are visually impaired but not blind. And I'd have to go back and look it all up. But we're looking for level 2 on the new site. And just to give you an idea of what we ask folks to do, this is a lift from the RFP. And by the way, 8 years is an amazingly long time when it comes to anything electronic or digital. Typical lifespan is 3 to 5 years, so that's probably what we're looking at with the new site. None of us have a crystal ball. None of us knows what's going to come down the pike. If I did, I'd be rich and I wouldn't be here. But that said, when you're looking at all this, think 3 to 5 years. We'll probably be going through this again because our wonderful new shiny thing isn't going to be new and shiny anymore. But the capabilities we're looking for, and I'm not going to read through all of these, but you know, if the thought is, gee, I have a cousin who could put up a WordPress site for a lot less than that, yeah, probably true. But it's not going to do all these things. You know, we need that responsive design. It needs to be designed for mobile first. Basically, I mean, we're finally to the point where most people are going on with their phones and not with a desktop computer. And if they're not doing that, they're on a tablet. It needs to be designed first and foremost for that. We need a compelling homepage. We need search engine optimization, which we kind of do through a small third party right now. All these things need to be integrated into it for it to be at least acceptable to provide the experience people need to come and use our site and visit Lincoln City. And keep in mind, this is the centerpiece. This is the thing that we point everyone toward. All of our advertising, all of our promotion, all of our everything is telling the people to come to this site. And when we don't provide them with an easy, intuitive experience, if it's not built like a funnel to where the logical conclusion is book a hotel room right now, then it's not doing its job. So it's vitally important that all these things are handled in the new site. We went through a formal RFP. The responses are all in here. We had 10 different folks respond to it. And we graded the written responses. We picked 3 firms to talk to and did interviews. And it was things like project understanding, management strategy, qualifications, capability and approach, experience and preferences, overall quality and creative of proposal, and of course, proposed pricing and fees. So we went through a very vigorous process on the written. From the written, we chose finalists, we interviewed finalists, and from that, we came up with a recommendation. The company we're recommending is an outfit called Tempest. One of the things we did was to have the city's IT department tag along through all this and look at it with an eye that none of us have in terms of technical capability and average load time and a bunch of other things I don't quite understand. Tony took his wizardry, took a look at it and went, yeah, these guys I think will work just fine. But it was a fairly tight race, but the folks with Tempest, in our mind anyway, were the ones that definitely came out on top. The things we liked about them, they work exclusively in the tourism industry. There were a couple other folks we looked at that did a bunch of different things, didn't have a good gut feel that they knew what we do chapter and verse. Excellent track record and experience in award-winning web design. They've got plaques and trophies and all that. And plus, we went in and took a lot of the sites they've designed for test drives, and we liked what we saw. This is important. They develop on an open source content management system. Okay, what that means is if we ever get mad at them and decide to take our bat and ball and go home, we're not sitting in a proprietary platform that they designed and only they know how to work and only works on their platform. We can pick this up and migrate it elsewhere without any trouble at all, which was another key thing. We looked at some guys that answered the RFP where it was something custom built by them to where if we ever wanted to go, we'd start from scratch again, and I don't want to be in that position. Because it's open source, that means there's also no annual licensing fees for the website. Some of the other ones were, oh yeah, we built all this custom software and you pay for it every year and here's how much. these guys aren't that way at all. Robust capabilities as a full-service digital agency, not limited to website development only. Again, we wanted somebody that could do the search engine optimization and customer relations management and all the things we want to have happen under one umbrella with people that are experts. And again, these folks offered that. Right size is something we try to look for when working with people. If they're too small, they don't have the expertise and the capability and the depth of staff. If they're too big, they don't care about us, and we'll get the B or the C team, or we just won't get the service we want. Again, looking at who they work with and what they do and other communities they work with about our size, there was a good comfort level there. Between the written and the oral, they demonstrated a firm understanding of the project and us. We found the pricing to be reasonable, and the written response they gave us and the interview, they came off as a quality firm. So our low bid was $38,000. I wouldn't buy a used car from those folks, but that's just me. The high bid was $300,000. Average was 110. These guys came in at 82. 82 is less than we have in the budget, as was approved at the budget meetings. So our proposal, if City Council agrees, is that we get the basics. The core website itself is $70,000 to put together. Site hosting, which is an annual fee, which is about what we're paying anyways, $2,400 annually. Site support is $10,000 annually. Now, site support right now largely consists of me running web mechanic on our site, walking into Scott's office saying, look at all the broken links, will you fix these? It's not the way to do it. This gives us dedicated people. This gives somebody continually stress testing the site. This is them coming back to us going, hey, did you realize this, and don't you think this should be fixed, and why don't we add this module or whatever. This gives us much, much, much better site maintenance than we have right now. The things that are optional that we would like to get that brings us up to the amount we have in the budget is a microsite builder. One of the things we offer folks, if they get a grant through the VCC, we'll help them design a logo, we'll help them do a microsite, and we have a template. So if you look at pixiefest.com, chowderandbrewfest.com, atourtodiefor.com, it's all the same website. This allows us to do that in a simpler, easier, and more cost-effective fashion. The itinerary personalization feature, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about how we need web wayfinding here. We need to help people understand what we have in town and how to use it and whatnot. This feature allows people to go in and, based on their interests, create itineraries. That gives them all the information they need to come in and enjoy the town. Our gut feel on this one is this will impact length of stay. If we can demonstrate to people that there's a lot of things to see and do, instead of one night, maybe they stay 2 or 3. This gives us a tool to better serve our customers, better treat them as a guest, and hopefully get them to stay longer. And the next one is customer relationship management. This is a very complicated tool. This would do everything from helping us manage conference and meeting leads. This would allow us to better manage the people that have an interest in Lincoln City and want to hear about things like, oh, I really love the Kite Festival, or I have an interest in hot rods, let me know when you have car shows, or whatever. This is a very sophisticated tool that would basically draw from a number of sources, compile them in a database, and feed that information back out again to people in a meaningful and actionable way. And then the last one, search engine optimization at $24,000. We're currently spending $32,000 on search engine optimization through a firm out of Bend. I want to bring it under the same roof and the same umbrella and have people that are very familiar with us working on it rather than the folks we're using right now. So What I'm here to ask for is an okay for $82,400 for the basics, and then a grand total for that first year of $132,400 to give us the website and the digital capability that we feel that Lincoln City needs. Here's where it comes from. Oh, go right ahead. I'll go back.
What if we decided on the 132.4, what would our ongoing annual fee be?
$70,000 to develop the site, to build it. That's a one-time cost.
Yeah, no, I mean
Yeah.
in the future, the next year. What are our annual costs?
Annual would be 22, 32,
40,000.
yeah. And we're already spending 32 on just the search engine optimization.
And 24.
46.4.
Here's where the money comes from. The core website development, microsite builder, itinerary personalization, and the first year of customer relationship management would come out of capital. There's the budget line item there. Computer software maintenance, that's always where our hosting resides. There's where we pull for that piece of the budget. And then contracted services would cover site support and search engine optimization.
May I ask a question? Thank you. The mayor isn't here tonight, but I know that he would ask you about an app.
Right.
And so I can hear him. But is there an opportunity at some point to add an app to make it,
Yeah.
to just fill
I
out the
think-
whole?
And this is me being old and being mystified by a lot of this stuff. It's humbling to realize that 90% of everything I've ever learned in my entire career is probably obsolete at this point. What we need to do is rather, let's have an app. I think we need to ask the question, what do we want it to do? And I think I heard the mayor mention wayfinding was one of the big things. Rather than dictate a platform, rather than saying, let's have an app and it needs to do wayfinding, I think we need to take it to the experts, and maybe it's within this project overall, and say, we'd like to find a way to do wayfinding. And if that's delivered via mobile to your phone through the site and it's not an app, that may be better. It may not be. We may need an app. But what I'd like to do is explore that as a need we need to fulfill, rather than here's how we're going to fulfill it, and by the way, here's the need. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
In the staff report, it mentions one of the things that this vendor can do is Google Maps integration / wayfinding.
Right. Yeah, but it's not an app.
But it's not-
Yeah, right.
It's delivered to your phone, but it's not necessarily an app.
Yeah, I think so. Mr. Hoagland?
I had a question, if you go back to the previous slide. Did you find any of that information with the second best candidate? Do you have any of that data to compare what
the second best
total cost and then their annual fee would be?
Yeah, with the second best candidate, they showed a lot of this. In fact, they had this one thing that was driven by artificial intelligence that would do a lot of impressive things. Where we had heartburn and where we fell out of bed was they've only done one CVB website from scratch. And the feature, Tony was really impressed by it, but when we looked into it closely, it's never been done in a tourism environment before. A lot of what they were proposing would have us as the beta site the first time anybody ever tried to do this or that. And I don't know, if we were a much bigger city with a much bigger budget and could roll the dice a little bit and recover, I might be interested in that. But I don't want to be the utter pioneer for anything. I want to make sure that we get into something that's rock solid and tested and absolutely works. So that's where number 2 fell out of bed.
So with Tempest, I see Stockton and Louisville both being rather large cities. Are those the other VCB type accounts that they have, or we would be their number 3 or their number 30, or how much more experience?
They have quite a few. I'd have to go back and look, and I can get back to you on that. But they've built websites for a lot of CVBs. You know, this is not their first rodeo, and it's pretty much what they do.
Okay.
Ms. Casper? Mr. Anderson, questions? All right. So, I would entertain a motion.
Looking for a motion?
Yes.
Ed, you didn't do a very good job of framing your motion that you wanted in your staff report, other than to give you, I think it says, give you everything Ed said. You know.
I was always taught to close the sale.
Yeah. So, is there, Mr. Attorney, can you help what might capsulize this motion?
At this point, it's authorized execution of contract with award of the contract to Tempest in the amount not to exceed $132,400. $400.
134?
132,400.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize execution of the contract with Tempest by Explorer Lincoln City in the amount not to exceed $132,400. Roll call, please. Or any more discussion?
Anderson?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
And Walke?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now you're on the agenda for selection of full-service agency of record.
Okay, before I get into this, one of the overriding considerations is that you're really not seeing any new spending whatsoever. When I came here, we didn't have an agency of record and still don't. We have a design firm in Portland. We have a media placement firm in Bend. We've got any number of small vendors and suppliers and whatnot, none of which go over $20,000, none of which have ever come in front of City Council, none of which you had ever had a chance to take a look at and review. We're getting ready to launch a new brand, and to do so riding herd on that many vendors and suppliers and whatnot is going to be difficult at best. So what I'm going to put in front of you right now is spending we've always done, things we've always tried to accomplish, only they're under one roof. They're with one firm. And it is well beyond my spending authority. It's well beyond the spending authority of the city manager, and it's something that has to be approved by City Council. I want to do it that way. I want it to be transparent. I want everyone to see what we're putting together, and I want to make sure there's a comfort level in doing this. It's my firm belief that this is going to be better for everyone. It's going to be better for the city. And I'm going to go through this again fairly quickly. I'm happy to back up and go into detail as we go through The variety of vendors that we have are to do things like branding and campaign creative and graphic design and collateral development of all of our brochures and whatnot, advertising, purchasing, the SEO stuff that you just agreed to allow us to migrate to the other firm. There's just a ton of stuff that we're doing, and like I said, it's all going out to all these different vendors. These are the folks we work with and some of the folks we work with underneath different categories. One of the things I'm hoping to see happen is if we can pull all this together, if we can put it into a full-service shop, what I'm hoping to see happen is we have at least 1/2 of an FTE freed up on the 4th floor to start doing other things. To ride herd on this takes an inordinate amount of time, work, and coordination. And frankly, I think a lot of it is a lot of wasted motion, and we don't have to do it that way. So what we want to do is to take a marketing agency of record, plug it into the folks that are doing the website, and basically have a very simple number of Lincoln City marketing partners that we're using to execute our marketing. Again, we did an RFP, and we had 11 responses. Some of them utterly and totally amazed me. We had an agency from Miami. We had one from Washington, D.C. We had another one from Philadelphia. The guys in Philly also have branch offices in San Francisco and Chicago, and I forget where all. Anytime we wanted to meet with them, it was a minimum $2,000 for them to come to Lincoln City. We will not be using them. But we had an amazing array of folks. And again, we had written responses that we went through. We winnowed that down to 3 finalists, did oral interviews, in-person interviews with the 3 finalists, and then made a final decision. And we looked at things like, again, project understanding, creative and design approach, qualifications, experience and references, their overall quality of their proposal, because if they can't sell themselves, I doubt they're going to be able to sell us, and proposed pricing and fees. One of the things in here that I firmly demanded that everybody come in and express that they do and show us examples of is the use of a creative brief, where it's not, hey, go do us an ad. It's, here's the background, here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's the target audience, that we agree on that document before any work is done. And if they didn't work in a strategic manner, they were not part of the consideration set. The scoring that we did, and this was a long and arduous process, the folks we came up with are the same folks that did our branding exercise, BPN up in Portland. They had a bit of a hometown advantage because they got to know us chapter and verse through that exercise, but going through it, it was pretty evident that those were the folks that we wanted to work with. They've got experience across a variety of industries, a fair amount of travel and tourism with DMOs. They're currently the agency for Mount Hood. They know our business. They get it. They've won awards. The quality of work that they showed us was excellent. They definitely had a firm understanding of the project, the brand, and the client. They can hit the ground running. They've got robust capabilities as a full-service marketing agency, and again, right size. When we first started working with them, it was like, these guys feel a little big, for us. And then we went to visit them up in Portland. When I worked in Atlanta at the agency, I worked there many, many, many years ago. They had the top 3 floors of the 400 building in Colony Square in Atlanta. I went up expecting the same with BPN. They have half a floor. They had a rough time through the Great Recession, pulled themselves back up by their bootstraps. They're still hungry. We are by no means their largest client, but they've demonstrated that they want our business and that they'll be giving us seasoned staff a lot of attention, and there was a comfort level there. They understand our core markets. They are the second largest agency for placement of media in the state of Oregon. If you look at their media placement, one of their clients is Oregon Lottery, and that's a huge, huge chunk of it. They spend about $10.5 million in Oregon. What that does for us, since most of what we do is going to be Portland, Salem, and then regional for the rest, is that we can roll in as the VCB and go, hey, I've got $380,000 to spend. What kind of deal are you going to give me? Whereas BPN goes in and goes, we're going to drop $10 million. What kind of deal are you going to get me? They're going to make our media dollar go a lot farther than we're able to, a lot farther than the folks that we worked with out of Bend, just because of the clout they have. I want to get to the point where we're doing retail promotions and sweepstakes and a lot of top spin up in Portland. They're able to deliver that. Excuse me. They have a good, solid team. Their pricing and fees came in reasonable when we compared it to everyone else. And they had a very high-quality written response and interview. They did a good job of selling themselves, which, again, I think translates to they can help sell us. Again, excuse me. This is the first time City Council is seeing an ask to hire a firm like this. This is the first time that the VCB, Explore Lincoln City, is being completely transparent with this request. We're laying everything on the table. Oh, thank you. God, gin helps. I'm kidding. So, we want you to take a look at this. This is a very significant amount of money, and I want to make sure that there's a City Council comfort level for what we're asking to do here. This is going to expand the quantity and quality of resources available to the VCB. I mean, when we showed some of Explore Lincoln City, sorry, Deanna, one of the questions that Ron had was, well, with all this money you're spending and fees and this and that, couldn't you just hire someone to do it all? And the answer is no. Unless I could hire Leonardo da Vinci, who was like this Renaissance person that could plan media and write TV spots and do this and do that and be excellent at all of it. One of the things with an agency is they've got a talent pool that's supported by multiple clients, and the good ones offer you the best of the best. One of the things I am looking so forward to is to have access to great copywriters. If you read our website right now, it reads like a memo, and that's because Scott and I wrote it. I want to get past those days and see everything we have a personality and a tone and speak in the second person and be conversational and invite people in. I can do a lot of things, but I can't do that. Neither can Scott. These guys are going to be able to bring that to the table. We talked about their negotiating clout, more efficient use of Explore Lincoln City staff time. I mean, I'm also looking forward to not splitting up a bunch of work and having multiple people supervise multiple things, to have it all under one house where we talk to one person, make one phone call, and have it done and done right, where I can free up an inordinate amount of staff time to do other things. It creates a robust extension of department capabilities with access to agency. We just talked about that. And also better analytic reporting and data analysis to drive decision-making and accountability. You folks trust me with a whole lot of money. You trust Explore Lincoln City to present Lincoln City in the best light and to get results. It's hard to pull together all the numbers we should have and present them on a regular basis as to how we're doing. We're going to go from Scott and Liz and me looking at the Google Analytics and pulling this together and that together and try to come up with reports that we put in the Ron report every 2 weeks. These guys are going to give us a dashboard where everything feeds into it, and we can test things, we can look at performance, and we can kill the stuff that doesn't work and put the money into the stuff that does. We try real hard to do that now. We can't do it as well as we can with the tools that they can bring to the table. So our low bid in the used 1995 Plymouth Neon category was $62,400. Our high bid was $234,400. We can't afford them. The average bid was 107. BPN came in at 120. The total recommended contract for BPN would break down as follows. There's a $120,000 annual fee, and we'll get into what that covers. But, you know, every once in a while I got the idea that I could start an agency and get rich. I've done it twice now, and if I ever decide to do it again, just break my fingers or something. But the clients that never worked out were the clients that billed hourly. I mean, I would see them as social function. They would literally run the other way because they thought the meter was running. So I don't want a relationship with an agency where the meter runs every time we use them because there's such a disincentive to using them. Then we fall back into the same trap we're in now, where Scott ends up doing a lot of stuff he shouldn't be doing and whatever. $120,000 is a lot of money. It's $10,000 a month. This will be transparent. This will be reviewed on a regular basis. There will be an annual audit. They will show us how many hours they were putting against the our Lincoln City as an account. We will make sure that this just isn't money in their pocket. There's nothing wrong with them getting a reasonable profit, but we're going to be good stewards of the money and make sure that this is reviewed, examined, and justified on an ongoing basis. It's also money, for the most part, we've been paying out anyway in bits and pieces and dribs and drabs here and there. You gather it all together, this isn't all that different. For advertising and promotions, and that's including some media commissions, although we're to the point now where the old traditional media, radio and television and whatnot, we can't afford a lot of TV, we don't have a big enough budget. We're moving out of radio into more digital. The digital is not commissionable, so the media commissions aren't that much. And then non-retainer services, those are going to be project-based. We can show you that on a schedule, but total is $500,000. So when we get to the retainer, this is everything that covers. It's the brand messaging, evaluating and determining the need for a brand refresh if we get to that point, brand style guidelines, integrated marketing and strategic plans, evaluating media opportunities, media plans, negotiating media buys, establishing metrics and tracking. There's a lot to what we're getting. Those are all hours they invest. We will track those hours and make sure that we're getting the most out of the fee. We expect the amount of time they put in to be very heavy the first year because we're rebuilding everything. That will taper off into more of a maintenance mode in second, third, whatever years, however the contract lasts. And we will adjust the fee they get accordingly based on what they're doing, based on the value that we receive. And again, I'm not going to go through all these, but there's a lot that goes into what we get for the fee. And it's services we've been buying for multiple sources over the years anyway. But again, we want to be upfront and clear on what we're doing. Keep in mind, too, a lot of that $500,000 is passed through. $380,000 is for purchase of paid media. They don't keep that. That's not money in their pocket. They negotiate rates. They place the media. It's going to be paid social placement, radio spots, television, radio, newspaper, whatever. They'll plan and place it for us. They're not keeping that money, so don't think of that as money that goes into the agency's pocket. When I first got here, we were placing all of our own media. We were primarily paying top of the card because we had negotiating clout. It was also eating up all the time of 3 people on my staff. We went to Eclipse Marketing, where we consolidated the media purchasing. That made things a lot easier. This is going to be the next step in a direction that's going to allow our media dollars to go farther and be more efficient and effective. Non-retainer services, that's project-based work outside the scope of the retainer fee, and it'll be billed per the agency's standard billing schedule. I intend to rarely, if ever, dip into this. If we get into work that's so far afield that the retainer can't cover it, or if we burned up all the retainer money and we need more, it's incumbent on me and my department to make sure that happens, rarely, if ever. You also have things like production costs, printed materials, subcontracted photography. They don't own a printing press. They don't have photographers on staff. So again, it's going to be like the media, it's passed through. So they will help direct us. They will have creative people touching it. They will help us get better work. But when we use a Cody Chaw to do more video work, or if we work with other suppliers, they'll be doing that, but it's going to be much like the media purchasing. It'll be passed through. So here's where the money comes from: contracted services, and this is a little comparison between fiscal year 17-18 and the upcoming year. Right now, professional services is at $62,000. Advertising and promotion is at $514,000. There's professional services in that $514,000 because when the branding project took longer than we thought it would be, money we had earmarked for contracted services, we dropped down into advertising because it was a use it or lose it situation and allowed us to spend a little bit more money on media. So for that total core marketing investment, we spent $576,000. This year we're proposing we spend $546,000. It's a little bit less. Contracted services is $156,000. Advertising and promotion is at $390,000. You can see we had that professional services line disappear and go back up to where it was originally intended. So, very long-winded story short. What we'd like to do is to bring all the marketing spending out in the open. We'd like to put it in front of City Council. We're recommending that we continue our relationship with BPN, and we'd respectfully like to ask for an okay to put this in place.
Lots of questions. Absolutely. So who is the staff that, and how is your, I'm guessing, 100-point base questioning done?
The staff that looked at this was me, Scott, and Liz Francis. Liz is our numbers finance person. So she was she was in on it to hold our feet to the fire to make sure that financially it made sense.
And it was 100 points. They started with 100, and you docked them as you went, or it was an average of?
Each category had a point assigned to it. This is worth 25 points. This is worth 15 points. This is worth 20 points type of thing. And out of that score for each category, we gave them and up to whatever that score was worth, point value. Added up, it was 100. And we also had, oh wait, I'm thinking of the digital. Yeah, it was me, Liz, Scott.
Can you go back to that slide?
Sure.
So in each of those subcategories, the interview, I don't know what the SH,
Scott
ED,
Humphrey,
is that the people?
Ed Drystott, and Liz Francis.
Since it's I understand that you wanted to present this. It would have been a whole lot better if you gave us all of these slides, because this is a huge decision, the first time ever, and now we have to make it like that based on this, and you gave us, two things. That being said, so and then if I may move forward, you said the amount of money, the $500,000, isn't all that different. So if you go back to like the second to last slide, and you showed the last 2 years, we had 546, and the previous year was 576.
Right.
So the pass-through amount is 380, and that is to directly relation to the 514. How are you comparing the 120 and 380 to those two amounts?
Okay, the 514 included money that was originally budgeted for contracted services.
Sure.
That we didn't spend because we didn't hire an agency.
But you're not listing it there, you're just saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, but it's not. So you're saying that 62,000 is in the 514?
Okay, we have, the actual media budget in the previous fiscal year was about $380,000. Okay? I mean, there's no
2017, 18.
17, 18.
Okay.
We had budgeted money to put the new brand in place with the assumption that we had a full-service agency in place. It didn't happen because the branding took a long, long time to put in place.
Right.
And we missed that window, so we invested that money in media instead.
At that time?
At that time.
Okay.
Which is why you're seeing such a big jump between 514 and 390.
Because you're taking it out for this?
We're putting it back. It was a one-time. It was allocated money that didn't get spent for its original purpose that we reinvested in media, just trying to do what we could to make sure that it hit the ground and gave the city some benefit.
You didn't want to lose it.
Right.
So if you go back to the couple slides, and we'll keep going to the media, nope, back again, back again, back again, back again. That one.
Yeah.
You said that there was a 12% commission. Maybe it's one more. You said there wasn't a commission. I don't know which one it was, but you said that there was. You said there wasn't a commission, but there is a commission.
Well,
in that 380.
Yeah, there's a commission. I'm just saying it's not a significant, amount of money because we're seeing traditional media wane. We're seeing more and more digital media. Digital media does not give an agency commission. We've been paying commission too to Eclipse Marketing, who's been our planning and placement agency. So again, that's not new. It's not a new expense. It's something we've always done as part of the compensation package. It's just that it's gone to a standalone firm.
Sure, but you said pass through, but it's not all pass through. So it's.
I'd have to go.
But you're saying one, and then it's not. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well,
it's 380.
It's
not. Though.
Well, the bulk of it is pass through because the bulk of it is digital.
But that's not what you said. I just want to make clear that I understand that 380 does include a 12%. It includes it, or there is a 12% on the 380.
There's a portion of the 380 that includes a 12%, not
underneath
the entire
it.
380.
Underneath it, so included in the 380 is a 12% commission.
On commissionable media. Okay, so if we run something in 1859 magazine, they won't offer it to a client, but if it's placed by an agency, the agency gets 15% commission. And you negotiate that. And keep in mind, too, we haven't negotiated this package yet. We're going to go back in after this and make sure that we're happy with the deal. This is as presented by BPN from the RFP. So it's not a done deal yet. We'll still go in and adjust and tweak. And one of the things we can talk about is the commission amount because very few places get full 15 anymore.
What does Eclipse get?
For 12.
Can you say what Eclipse gets now?
Eclipse was getting about 7.
So, and then with the $120,000 retainer fee, so that I understand, if you go to that slide where it had where it has that green box on the right side, forward, so of that amount, the $120,000 is what you decide BPM does as far as marketing, and then if you decide to do more, I don't understand your role and their role in this whole thing as far as they're the facilitator of what you're telling them that Explore Lincoln City wants?
BPN is a pool of talent that, I couldn't afford any one of those folks as an employee. But because multiple clients are paying for them, I get access to that talent pool.
Sure.
The fee is basically going to cover access to that talent pool, and it's going to be based on hours.
You're going to get $120,000 worth of hours
Yes.
of marketing from BPN.
Yes.
That you decide you want them to
Yes.
do.
Yes.
And that if those things there on that chart are not included at all in that $120,000, or that's the menu you get to pick from.
Okay, again, if we go in and let's say we're going to do a television spot.
Okay.
Say, guys, I want you to do a TV spot. All the creative time, all the production time that they're investing in it, all the soup to nuts is covered by the fee.
Up into $120,000.
Up into $120,000.
Do you
Now,
tell
it's-
them I want $50,000 worth of TV commercial?
What we're going to do is to have them report to us on a regular basis what they're investing in terms of hours using their rate card versus the fee. Now, again, it's going to be heavy up front because we're going to be replacing everything. But we want an assurance that the fee is buying the time we need to get the product that we want. So it'll be incumbent on us to go, guys, we're burning up $5,000 worth of time a month. This isn't working, and we make an adjustment. Or it's like, my God, we're at $20,000 a month, but it'll winnow down to $5,000 a month later in the year. Just let us ride, and we're going to keep the fee as is. There's a lot of ways we can go into it, but it's up to us to be comfortable with the fact, and again, this is all above board, that we're getting the amount of time and attention and the product we want within that fee. Now, the way they came up with the fee, and we had a couple of shops that we talked to, it's like, look, guys, we just pulled this out of the air. We don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along. They're a little bit in that boat, but they also have Mount Hood Territory as a client. Mount Hood pays them this amount, and that's what they based it on. So
Okay.
it's probably ballparkish.
So do you foresee the first year blowing through the $120,000 because
Probably.
Right. So right.
But when we get to the next year, and we're to the point where we're just doing refreshes and we're not reinventing the wheel, I can see that fee going down.
So
And-
how
and
does
it-
that come? Does that come back to us then?
Yes, it's a negotiation. It's an annual fee negotiation.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure we're going to burn up all our time the first year because we have to redo everything.
Ed, you're not asking for new money.
No.
This is money that Budget Committee has and Council has approved in your existing budget.
Yes.
So all you're doing is, the proposed budget at July 1, and as far as I could tell, we're not replacing you. You're still our point person.
Correct.
You've just added staff by way of this agency.
Yes and no.
Well, in essence, you've allocated some $120,000
Correct.
to tap into a resource
Right.
to assist you in what we expect you to do for Explore Lincoln City.
Which, if you add up all the little guys we worked with,
It's not new money. That's what I'm,
yeah, go ahead.
and that's where I'm getting is I'm comfortable, just so you know, with you managing Explore Lincoln City. I'm comfortable with you upgrading. We've already proved your parameters, i.e. the budget. So, I'm taking your recommendations. I don't know squat about this stuff, and I'm hoping you do. But the important thing is the management part, because as long as you're watching, how the dollars roll out, I think it's a no-brainer, and you've put through the test, whether it's the website people or this. So I'm comfortable.
Thank you.
Your Honor, sorry. If I could just, 2 points. First, advertising contracts are basically exempt from the typical procurement that we have. We have a specific exemption. So you wouldn't see those through any process. And, you know, the manager does have a $50,000 contract limit, so Ed could basically, through the manager, go without any real process through the procurement competitive bidding process, lend out a lot of $50,000 contracts for advertising and marketing, basically. So what he's done is basically said all that marketing and advertising was leading to inconsistencies, and so he's brought it all together. And in doing that, he went through a formal RFP and got 11 responses and went through a selection process, so it's much more transparent than normally you would have seen. And all that's fine and good. The entity, however, that is entering into these contracts is the City of Lincoln City, because there is no entity of the VCB. The VCB is a department of the city. So when we say Explore Lincoln City is entering into the contract, it's the City of Lincoln City is entering into the contract, not the VCB. They're not a separate body. Kathy was asking me, what was the motion to, who's entering into the contract? The City of Lincoln City would be entering into the contract. And in this case, you're going to want to authorize, award of the contract, negotiation, and execution of the contract with the City of Lincoln City.
Any other questions? Ms. Hinton?
No, actually, I was just going to move to a motion if you were ready.
I had one question. One of your first slides indicated a lot of vendors that we currently use, and a lot of those are locals. And I always hate to take away local jobs. But can we encourage them to use local people? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever want to not use
You said they don't have a
Cody
printing press. so-
Right.
Yeah.
And, we're going to try to absolutely make sure that a lot of these, stay in place. We definitely want to make sure that we use locals. But we'll also have these guys working in partnership with us to where they'll be at quality printing, watching stuff come off the press to make sure it's in register and the colors are right, that type of thing.
Right.
So I'm not saying we'll never use any of these folks again, far from it.
Right.
It's just that the quality standards, the oversight, the materials that are fed into them would all be coming from one source.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Ms. Hinton, did you have a motion to make?
I do, thank you. I move to award the contract for development of a full-service marketing agency, Borders, Perrin, Noriander, in the amount not to exceed $500,000.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation by the Explore Lincoln City for the City of Lincoln City to enter in a contract with Borders, Perrin, and Noriander. Any other discussion?
Just a clarification, was that the right number? I thought it was 120 plus, then there's marketing, advertising.
Yeah, here we go. Total recommended contract for BPN would break down as follows: 123.80, 500.
Okay, so it is 500.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Roll call, please.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Casper? Yes. Walke?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dreistadt.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the construction contract award for Lincoln Square roof replacement. Ms. Bradley?
Good evening, Council. I'm Lila Bradley, Public Works Director for the city. And we have a roof bid that came in quite a bit higher than we expected, but I have I'll explain it all to you. So the background, our current roof, as many of you know, has some leaks and some dry rot, and it's been well used over the years. And so we budgeted, actually in 2017, then we rolled it over to 2018 fiscal year because of weather and contractor availability. And so the project includes the repair of damaged roofing sections, preparation of the existing roof for recovering, and installation of a PVC or rubber membrane roofing system. And so we put this out to bid in March 21st. I wish I could have done it before the budget went through, but we had bids from Washington Roofing Company at $232,685. That was our low bid. We also had a bid from West Coast Roofing and Building of $376,000. And we had Stutzman and Crop contractor in the amount of $480,575. So quite a spread there. You can see where our market's going. And so the lowest responsive and responsible bidder was Washington Roofing Company in the amount of the $232,685. We did have, I had put in the budget $150,000 for the roof replacement, and that was based on a quote that I had from a while back. So, and I also put in $100,000 for an HVAC controller system, and we were trying to work with the Energy Trust on that to put in some new controls, and the price tag just kept escalating, and just the buyback, and so we went back and forth a bunch of times on that one. So we determined not to do that, just stay with our manual control system. So we would be able to use that money, and then the balance would be from the facilities fund, which capital improvement fund, which we have contingency in. And the last time we replaced a roof was in 1999. We bid it out, and it was finished in 2000. Had a 10-year warranty, and so it's really served us well over all these years. So our potential motion, unless if you have questions about it, I'd be happy to answer.
I do.
Mr. Hoagland?
Yes, thank you. The warranty for the glass blowing studio was 30 years, I thought. Or do you remember?
No, they did it. I think they did an extended warranty, but our warranty on this particular roof was 10 years.
10 years again. Okay.
So it was 10 years from 2000. So we've had the roof redone.
What will this one be? I'm sorry.
Usually it's the manufacturer's 10-year.
Yeah, I was just wondered why that one.
And they last, we're also going to put the 8 HVAC units up before we do the roof. So that's.
We are going to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're being delivered, and so we'll be able to pay for those out of the last fiscal year.
Will it be white PVC?
Yes, I believe so. The membranes are white.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Anderson?
The two other bidders were incomplete.
Yes, I think they must not have turned something in.
So I'm always curious. Do we check with them when it comes, we declare it as incomplete? The reason I'm asking it's both of those are so much higher than the lowest bid, and I'm just wondering if
yes, we
incomplete because they didn't know enough,
yeah,
or
yeah, we let them know if something is incomplete. So they missed something in it.
Yeah, those are huge difference.
Yes, it is a huge difference, and the price, I think one of the price changes was they changed, they used to use like this metal tape, and the building code quit using that, and they're using stainless steel now instead for the ridge caps. So those types of things make prices go up.
Questions? Has Washington Roofing Company done work for us in the past?
No, but we look them up. They're a reputable company. We always look at their license.
Yeah, I've seen them in town too.
Have you? Okay.
I'd move to award the construction contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Washington Roof Company, in the amount of $232,685 with a construction contingency of $23,326, which is a 10% bid amount, in a total amount of $256,011.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the construction contract to Washington Roofing Company in the total amount of $256,011. Any discussion? Further discussion?
Oh, there's just one. Is there still an opportunity for solar panels? Come on.
No, not on this roof. I'm sorry. I'll find
I'm gonna
a
put-
place for some.
Come on, please,
I promise.
Lila. Wastewater treatment. Well, that too.
Okay, roll call, please.
Anderson?
Yes.
Hoagland?
Yes.
Hinton?
Yes.
Casper?
Yes.
And Walke?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Madam, could I, while Lila's here, could I just, while you're here, Lila, to save you a trip, could you just share with us, off subject, the process to get a lane change, lane closure? I'm thinking of today.
Yes, on 101.
On 101, the people on 21st Street up by the Dairy Queen are really complaining about the backed up. I'm just kidding. It was that far.
It was
Yes.
from D River to the 22nd Street, absolutely, all weekend.
And I'm wondering, do we get involved, we, the city, get involved allowing, because it was our project?
Those were separate permits for those utilities, the Charter and CenturyLink.
Yeah.
So we
meaning
don't
they go-
really get to have a say in that.
We don't?
No.
We've got to do something, especially during the summer months, because that was a killer after the kite festival.
And
then-
I drove through that as well, and, I'm not sure if they needed to have it coned off as far as they did, for sure. I mean, it was an extra 20 minutes to get through that section.
Yes.
It's like 4th of July.
Thank you.
Yeah, and over the weekend, there weren't any lane closures, it was just heavy traffic.
It was just traffic, and, we can live with that. It was this. I just thought it was out of line.
It's difficult, hopefully they're finished.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Right. The next item on the agenda was the League of Oregon Cities legislative priorities, and I understand that's not due until the 8th of August, or beginning of August.
Yes.
So we have some time to maybe
August 3rd.
consider those at more length.
Madam Chair, if I can clarify, I had asked, but I didn't get a response. The purpose of this is to say the least likely that we don't want to participate in because it doesn't apply, or the least likely because it's already going well. Like, I wasn't really sure.
No, this is legislative priorities, and part one was, what are your top four? Part two was, what are your bottom four? So,
Don't want and do want.
yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, what you want and what you don't. And again, this is, each city is just providing input to the league
Sure.
so they can prioritize their work. That doesn't mean that the things on the list that aren't your top priorities won't be worked on. Some of these things are kind of low-hanging fruit that really isn't that difficult to address.
Is this supposed to be a consensus, or each
Yeah,
individual? Or
they're looking for consensus and
Okay, then.
on the top four and the bottom four.
From each city.
Yeah, we could, I mean, we could go through this and you could do like a nominating process and then you can nominate the ones you want and, and then we can read them and eliminate them. Or you can postpone this till the second meeting, or to July 9th, I guess would be the next meeting when Ron will be here. I did ask Ron if he had any specific recommendations for top four and bottom four, and he didn't. But he might by July 9th.
And I appreciated him including the council priorities list to remind us on what our previously agreed priorities were.
Madam President, I have a question. I'm not sure that this would require a work session, but I'd really like to have some discussion about, like you said, our priorities and how all of these things may or may not fit in, and unless the rest of you already have your minds made up. And
it's all well and good, but quite frankly, little impact is the answer. It doesn't warrant a lot of time.
Well, I know.
From council and work session, all that kind of stuff. I'm wondering why, we don't each of us choose our favorite 6 or whatever and turn these into Ron and let him, where there's 2 or 3 votes, that's one, and
Yeah.
I mean,
By
Yeah, that's
average majority.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want you to make a decision by turning them in, but I think if you take the list and mark the top 6 and bottom 6 and turn them in, we'll bring them back on July 9th, and then you guys can decide what your priorities are. So make decisions here.
that would work for me.
yeah.
But it's 4, not 6, right?
Well,
Why
yes,
not
but
say 6.
Well, I only suggested 6, and then it'll get down to 4. So Ron,
Oh.
because see, we're not all
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
choose the same
I see.
6.
As the highest, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that do we maybe make a motion for that?
I would continue the matter till July 9th and ask that counselors send individual responses to Ron. Don't communicate via email on this issue. So.
Sound good. A consensus?
Yeah.
Okay. We had no work session or executive session to take any actions on. Are there any additional comments from citizens present on non-agenda items? Seeing none. Announcements or comments by city councilors?
Madam
Yes,
President,
Mr.
I
Anderson.
just wonder again for council's, I'd like to ask council's permission if you would, through consensus, agree to direct staff to bring to city council for review and discussion a draft on offshore drilling. Councilor Walke and I attended a session and actually got a draft resolution, because as you may know, on a federal level, the folks have threatened to open the West Coast for drilling, and thought it would be appropriate that we bring it to our attention, because though we're not an oil-rich community, we're pretty concerned about our view sheds, and I think it's powerful enough where the city, we ought to take a look at it, talk about it, and maybe pass a resolution that would be forwarded.
Don't we have a statewide position on this?
Yeah.
This would just be in addition to the
Right.
statewide, because we're
Other-
looking out west?
And other cities have.
Other cities and counties have done, so it'd be
Okay.
a pile-on, so to speak.
So do we have a consensus to ask staff to bring back the resolution? Okay, thank you. If that could be noted.
I have another consideration.
Uh-huh.
If maybe we could get some direction on the nonprofit outside grant requests, how that timeline is moving along. Are we choosing to make those delegations pretty soon, or
We need a committee first,
committee? So maybe we can look at that next agenda.
or we could, should we appoint?
Doesn't it, the subcommittee needs to be reappointed?
Yeah.
Or a
Or
different committee?
appointed.
Or-
Appointed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What, Kathy?
So I missed a couple of meetings, but was a subcommittee appointed?
No.
No.
Okay.
We're wondering if that could be put on a
Agenda.
agenda in July so that we can get those.
Or could we, Madam President, could we just do that this meeting so that could, or it doesn't matter?
I think it needs to be on the agenda.
Okay.
And then, can I have one more say?
Uh-huh.
I wanted to give thanks to a community member who brought to my attention that one of our restrooms on Southwest 35th needed attention, and I called Public Works, and immediately within four days, we had Martha Stewart of the restroom in Lincoln City. It was a marvelous makeover, and it was a great improvement, complete with speckled flooring, and it was very, very appropriate. And I hope that we continue, even though the room smelled good, its looks didn't reflect how it smelled. So after the Martha Stewart touch, it was really appreciated in our community, and maybe, hopefully, all of our restrooms will have that Martha Stewart look. I never even thought to look until somebody came to me and said, "Have you seen?" I go, "No." So thank you, Public Works.
Okay. Oh, did you have something else?
Well, I did.
Mr. Anderson? Sorry.
If I could, two things. One, a big thank you to Parks. I understand at Parks and Jeannie, not Public Works, but I had on the landscaping in Taft. If you haven't noticed,
Nice.
the old growth, bushes and stuff have gone, and I think very beachy, low-maintenance landscaping has occurred, and I think it's clean and nice and well done. The other thing I had, Madam President, was a question, and I don't know who would have the answer. It seems to me in the past that the city has paid nonprofits to assist in cleaning the beach on July 5th. After the fireworks, that VCB in the old days, maybe it's Parks now, if we do it at all. And if we do, it'd sure be nice to kind of roll that out as an opportunity for nonprofits with their labor volunteers to maybe walk and clean a portion of the beach.
If I could add to that, I was just going to say, Roads End Improvement Association, the neighborhood association for Roads End, received a grant of $130 to cover expenses like for the flyers and the things that, and volunteers do clean that beach, that part of the beach, but that's just that section.
Right.
In coordination with the city and Solve and the casino and Safeway.
If I may. Doesn't Solve host a couple of spot locations too? They come in?
But not after the 5th necessarily.
I think they do.
Oh, do they?
I think they do.
They
do a couple a year, and I think one of them is the 5th.
But if there's a way, again, I'm looking at, where volunteers are into a nonprofit as a chance to pick up some money, but also to make sure the whole 7 miles get picked, because fireworks may be at Taft, but I assure you,
I go to Deer River every year and pick up,
Yeah.
this much and like that.
So that's all I had for those two. I don't know if we do that anymore.
Madam President, I had been contacted for there's a crosswalk requirement. I don't know that. I'm not quite sure about that, but I've been contacted by a citizen about a crosswalk is it East Devils Lake Road, 15th Street? I don't know. I didn't really fully understand it, but I would bring it up, and then another one was contacted by a woman by the assessor who was going around, and so just to bring that out, and said I would bring it up, and I think the best thing would be to contact the county commissioners, and though we hear you, if there's not enough funding or outreach for them, suggesting for us to provide the outreach, but I don't know what it would be like that. So it was interesting. It was an interesting phone call. So
I had a similar phone call. They were upset that they had no notification that the assessor's office was going to be visiting homes. And it's my understanding that there was some notification by the county, and I'm thinking that maybe that's one of those things we could bring up for discussion at our annual meeting with the commissioners,
Okay.
which is in July, I think.
But if I can, I got rolled into that myself. One, as a property owner and a taxpayer, one knows somebody's sniffing around all the time.
Right.
And I think the NewsGuard did a nice job of writing an article on, the assessment. And the county, you have to visit physically all the properties, not every year, but over time. Right. So I thought first that the person was concerned about a fraud or a scam or something like that. But, once you can get comfortable with that, with proper identification, I don't know what the issue is, quite frankly. Because welcome to paying taxes. They do nothing but go up. So, but I think it's a topic to point out that
Right.
maybe better communication. But
Madam President?
Yes.
I have a comment, which is...
Did you have anything else?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Which is actually a question of the city attorney. Earlier we had a fellow asking a question of us, and Kevin Koffel, I'm not sure of his name, and then at our last meeting his mother was also here talking about the same issue of a considerable amount of dog waste, and I thought that you said that you can correct me, please do, about an ordinance, a nuisance ordinance that might cover that. So I'm just curious about.
I did during that meeting send you all the citation to the nuisance ordinance, which included 2 sections. One which, as he correctly stated, referred to manure, and another section which just in general said that a premises is, odorous and, causing a nuisance in that way. So I actually preferred the second one, and I sent that to the code enforcement officer. Now the police chief has indicated that and the code enforcement officer has indicated that the factual situation is not as been related. They have been out to the property several times. I actually looked at our ordinance. Our parks ordinance has a more explicit pick up after your dog provision. It wouldn't be a bad idea to expressly address this. For some people, it's the worst thing ever that people don't pick up after their dog, and we could easily add it to our code. All it takes is council directing me to write it or the city manager asking me to do it. So
I think it might be a good idea, especially because we do have so many visitors, and I just think it'd be a good idea.
Okay,
I
so
think it'd be a good
consensus.
idea. Yep.
Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. I'm wondering if we want to discuss pedestrian flags or if we want to put that off to another meeting. Maybe ask for it to be a regular agenda discussion item.
We just got new information tonight,
Yeah.
so I haven't been able to read it yet.
I do know that this has been tried before, and it seemed to work well while it was working. He did indicate in his packet, in the materials in the packet, that many of the Ocean Lake business owners were very supportive of this. One thing that bothers me is that we're talking about this effort in one area of town, and a few months ago we had 2 deaths in a different area of town. So I think it's a bigger issue than just those 9 blocks, whatever he was talking about.
Madam President?
Yes.
I guess, to me, he had 3 different issues, and I don't know that we as a council have ever had a work session on this as a council, and that might be a better place to talk things through, because quite honestly, I'm not sure any of these are the right ones, or have oomph behind them.
Right.
So I'd maybe expand it, have Warren share with us a little better his details, his data, so to speak. Personally, I can't imagine the traffic enjoying one more reason to stop in Lincoln City. I mean, because somebody's got a flag. So if we were going to try something, I don't know that I'd want it in the peak summer season.
Yeah.
It just is a point, but some kind of work session to bang these things out.
I stopped suddenly because 2 lanes over, there was a woman coming across the crosswalk, and she had 3 to-go containers of food, and I'm thinking, how would she hold a flag also? So I'm not sure that it's the answer for everything.
I have another consideration with this is I'd like to have this within the broader discussion of our signage, because there are more and more of those flapping signs on the highway, and they distract me, and I know where I'm going. And so one more thing. So anyway, I have a lot
So maybe ask Ron to put it as a topic for a work session?
Yeah, and I don't know that it needs a whole work session.
Yeah, by itself.
2 hours, but maybe pair it with something else that's short to discuss. I don't want to just drop it. The other thing that I had to bring up is the League of Oregon Cities Conference is the end of September, and we do budget for as many council members who want to attend. And registration begins the 1st of July, which is a Sunday, so probably the 2nd of July. I'm just wondering if anyone has thoughts about whether they want to attend or not. I would like reservations made for me to attend the conference and to stay at the conference hotel.
Where is it?
It's in Eugene this year. Yeah.
What day is it?
It's the last Thursday, Friday, Saturday of September. So if you would like to attend, I would suggest that you contact Kathy before the end of the week.
I'd be
Okay.
interested.
There are lots and lots of topics that are covered, and when only 1 or 2 of us attend, then we can't get all the information that's available. And that's why it's nice to have more than one person from a city.
So that you go to those things, I'll go to these things.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Not that you attend the
Sure,
same
sure.
workshops, that you attend different ones, and then we can share the information.
Yeah.
So that's why it's nice to have more than one. Okay. Anything else? I want to wish everyone a safe 4th of July. Meeting adjourned.